All right. Bearing a technological disaster, I think we're actually live and online from sunny Helsinki. 27 degrees here right now. Pretty warm even for a summer. But yeah, thank you for joining us, all 150 of you attendees, for a special webinar on the seasonal intelligence approach to agronomy, to maintenance, to turf professionalism, to farming, and what Happy 100 has to say. I want to thank you once again for joining us. We have 150 attendees, which is not quite as many as I show speed. If you've got kids, you might know who he is. He turned up in Helsinki yesterday, and I think there was about 50,000 people following him around and a couple million online. But bear that in mind. We'll do our best. We'll try and be as professional as he is. Over the next 45 to 60 minutes, myself, John Kotze, COO at Soil Scout, and Bahman Doaeian, Head of Sales, we're going to walk you through some of the interesting practical data points and things that you need to bear in mind when looking at soil oxygen, but also different and very important metrics when doing your daily work. We're also going to run some polls during the webinar, so please do get involved and feel free to post any questions in the chat as well. We are going to record this, so if hello from Lithuania, hi from the US, Mr. Bob Berger, fair play. You were up nice and early. So if you do actually miss the end of this or you have to dip out, not a problem. You will get a link for the recording later on. Happy 100. So we launched it back in November. I was part of that as well as Bahman, where we did the launch webinar. And since then, we've had over 148,000 soil oxygen readings to date. We've shipped also to 75 countries and counting. So we are starting to really build up a lot of data around how our customers are using Happy 100 and other soil metrics to open their season earlier, to monitor winter hypoxia rates on their roots, also to understand how low spot and wet soil dynamics really do work, and then also what sort of interventions they should be targeting on their properties. Next slide, please. So before we begin, we're actually going to try now and get one of these polls working, which I'm going to see if I can launch now. Should be a pretty straightforward or deceptively easy one. If you go over to the tab with polls, we should have a poll that says, which season is the toughest? So feel free to fill that out as we move along. Whilst that's happening, Bahman, I'd like to hand over to you.
Thank you, John. Hello, everyone. One more time, I would like to welcome you from the whole Soil Scout team in a sunny Helsinki. Believe me, it's not easy to do any sort of work when there is such temperature out there. You want to be out there and enjoy your time. But as we promised, and we already have very exciting data that we would like to share the analysis and how we found from the Happy 100, which Happy means, by the way, oxygen in Finnish, all around the world. And we wanted to share it with you today. So let's dive in. Usually, before we explain anything about the data measurement and how we do it, we would like to always focus on the very foundational part of our solution, which is finding and adjusting and fine-tuning the field capacity of the different points of the measurement in your golf course. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do it very fast to show you how to set your field capacity. And then we dive into the Happy 100 data in different parts of the world. The reason I'm emphasizing on this one, and we would like to say it again and again, because if we don't have this building block and foundation, everything else like a data gathering and analysis would have some flaws in it. So let me show you how we can do that in a live golf course. So the day one, when you introduce the sensor to your system, like adding the sensor to the SolarSCAD hub, which is this environment, you want to wait for, let's say, 7 day to 10 days ish, or enough irrigation cycles and pulses so that you can see this moisture or water actually hits 1.00 in your water balance graph. And hitting that means that the soil is actually telling us that I am in the good spot. The water is just good enough, just balanced enough that I have enough air and I have enough water. To do so properly, basically for the first time, we want to go to our properties, choose the soil type, and system tells us the automatic field capacity for this loam is 25%. And then we come back to the sensor view. And now we want to zoom in, because when we zoom in, we see much more information, which is not possible to be seen this accurate when we have it for a year or many months. And what we would like to see in this zoom is when the moisture touches 1.00 and also the lines flat out. And by lining flat out like this, we are able to understand what is the right moisture here, which is like 25%, as you see. So the field capacity is already set on a correct amount. And if we check it also here, we can see the same number, 25%. So this is the way we set the field capacity. Go to properties, choose the right, correct soil type, wait for it for a week or 10 days or enough irrigation. When the lines touches 1.0 and flats, we find the field capacity. Now everything is good to go. Let's back in business. So the first topic to cover is the winter kill prevention. Basically, you don't want to have such situation in golf course at all. But what we have found with the Happy 100 and how we can prevent it. So I prepared 3 different cases for you, and we go to each of them one by one. As you see here, in one golf course, there are 3 different locations of the course: green one, red one, and yellow one. But there is a huge gap between the yellow and the green one from the moment the yellow sensor, which is the happy sensor, which is the oxygen sensor, basically completely drops, which is the meaning of winter kill. It's the meaning that there is absolutely no air in the soil in that specific depth, which is usually the root zone. And you can see the same reaction in the red and in the green one, but with a very big time difference. So what this means is that basically the yellow one starts showing the winter kill symptoms somewhere in the middle of December, but the red one shows the same thing, but at the beginning of the January, and the green one is somewhere around the 20-ish of January. So it's a big difference between the yellow one and green one in the same golf course, which means that according to the oxygen information that we got throughout this golf course for almost a year, when you do the proper aeration and control the situation, control means that you keep the moisture and you keep the oxygen always in the green zone of the water balance or oxygen graph, then you're going to have a faster recovery and bigger time for the playability or to recovery for the springtime. So the green one, which is actually the control sensor, has been always the best, taking care of the best throughout the year. And the yellow one, as you see, is the wet one. And wet usually means that you have less air, including oxygen, in the soil. And because it has been like that for many, many months, you can see the effect when we are approaching to the winter time. So when we say winter kill, the oxygen information suddenly opens up huge clarification for us. And it's like a light that we never seen the soil before, because we're supposed to rely on the moisture. We're supposed to look at the temperature, and we're supposed to remove the snow and if possible remove the ice. But oxygen actually tells us that in the same golf course with the almost same amount of snow in probably these three different locations, how easy it is that you start, let's say maybe around September or something, to do the aeration and to have a better control environment, to have longer playability. So imagine if you could extend the yellow and the red one to the green, you basically have 2 months more playability in your golf course. And suddenly all of them plunged, because we are talking about the obviously the zero temperature. And then you can see by itself that the green one recovers faster. So it gives you more playability and also recover faster in the springtime. And it totally makes sense. We see the same phenomena in almost all different golf courses around the world. So there is a very close relationship between the moisture and oxygen. You're supposed to look at the moisture most of the time, but now oxygen gives us even more information. Let's go to the case 2.
Bahman, before we jump into case 2,
Yes.
Thierry from the chat, are the sensors at the same depth?
Yes, they're all in the same depths. Yeah.
Thank you.
All of them are in the same depths. The whole point is to measure it apple to apple. We don't want to measure apple to orange. So they are in the same depths, they are in the same turf, same root zone. So everything is exactly the same thing. And before I switch back to the case 2, you can see this basically in this golf course, we have zero and sub-zero very like maybe a couple of days, and most of the time they are in a +5 degree or so. And then when we switch to the case number 2, you can see it's even more harsher environment with more sub-zero situation compared to the case 1. But what we see in case 2 and compare it to case 1, in the case 2, green and the red sensors has been controlled with the same moisture level. And as you can see, you're able to monitor dropping of the oxygen almost from the mid-December to the beginning of February. So you have enough time to understand the oxygen is slowly declining, and you have a snow and you have ice. So you're able to control the situation if you really want to, because you have enough time to understand. Oxygen gives you far ahead of when it's going to be fully plunged down to zero. So you are able to do whatever practice you have in your pocket to able to prevent it. But at the same time, in this golf course, the blue one has been wet for the purpose. And you can see this is the exact same condition compared to the case 1. So when you are having a wet part, wet location, wet sensor, you're always having basically less playability and longer time to recover. So it's lost the playability by beginning of the June, by beginning of the January, and recover back somewhere in the mid-March. But the green and red one has been playable up to almost beginning of February. So you have 2 months more playability, even in the zero condition, like absolutely zero temperature in the soil. And then let's see the case number 3. This is the case that they managed to keep the soil very, very controlled. They removed the ice and they removed the snow as much as they could. And they start the aeration and control, creating the control environment on this location for almost 3 months before. Most of them started around September to make sure that they have a faster recovery and faster back in business in the springtime. So what we see here together, it's basically said by itself. The oxygen has been in the green zone and obviously declining as we expect. There is a winter time. It has been almost always zero and then sub-zero. But even the declining has been in the green zone, which is somewhere around 14%, 13%, because the 10% is something that you are having the anaerobic situation or hypoxia. But they have managed to keep it in the green zone because they have started earlier and they could recover back to do the play without losing much time. So it's a very good example in if you want to compare the case 1 versus case 2 versus case 3 and see that if we prepare ourselves, if we actually look at the data, specifically the oxygen, we are able to understand that the oxygen is declining, and we start any prevention actions we want to do in order to have the faster recovery and more playability and obviously more revenue. So basically what we have seen in these 3 cases, by the average, what we see is that you have 60 days more playtime, up to 60 days. You have up to 30 days faster opening in the spring compared to other golf courses in your region. And you have less spring maintenance. You can also convert all of these to more revenue and less cost, obviously. And then I would like to move to the spring recovery, when the roots are actually ready. Now, let's run the second poll, John, if possible.
Sure. Just multitasking a bit here. Let's go over to the polls. Interestingly, so far, if you joined a little bit late and you did not submit an answer for the first poll, which was which season is the toughest, summer seems to be in the lead at the moment, with winter in second place. And then surprisingly, spring and autumn, even though they're transitional seasons, which are quite dynamic, they seem to be, well, they're in the last place. There's not much more to say, really. So please do chuck a vote in there. But let's also open the second poll, which you'll be able to find in the same tab. At what soil temperature does cool season root growth restart? That's a mouthful. At what soil temperature does cool season root growth restart? Is it 0 to 4 degrees centigrade, 4 to 10, 10 to 18 degrees centigrade, or 18 to 24 degrees centigrade? So please let us know what you think. When does cool season root growth restart, and what soil temperature?
Thank you, John. It's interesting you guys said about the summer. What we're planning to do is that even though the question is simple, we are going to follow it up after this webinar, hopefully if possible with each of you to understand more when you say summer, because probably we have something that we can help you, especially with the Happy 100. So let's be in touch after that on the summer as the toughest season. So how we used the same strategy when we have a Happy 100 to be ready for the recovery of the spring. So how Happy 100 gives us a heads up or give us more room or more time to start far ahead of everyone else. This is the case 1. So in the case 1, what we see right now is that the first oxygen recovery, which is the blue one, has started the recovery from like 24th, 25th of March. And the last one, which was the wet one, the red one, start recovery only at the beginning of April. So there's already a big gap here. And what we understand, because the temperature is a key for us when we talk about recovery, if you are like having a, let's say, cool species like the bluegrass or bent grass, or warm species like the Bermuda grass, as long as we are in 10 to 18 degrees Celsius, let's say 12 to 18, 10 to 18, it's just the time, obviously by observing the golf as well on the turf, but it's just the right time to start back in business. But we know that's quite simple. It's just the temperature. But the reason I show you this graph is that I'm showing you basically that oxygen also shows us that you don't need to wait for almost always the temperature to go to that specific degree Celsius or the Fahrenheit to start recovery. Because when the oxygen backs to the recovery, all the 135 oxygen sources around the world shows us that when the air backs to the recovery mode, it is just the time that you can start back to your recovery mode, meaning that you don't need to wait for the red one, like basically use somewhere around 15 days here. If you want to start the recovery from, let's say, mid-April, you could have started from basically 24th of March, which is a lot of time. It gives you almost 3 weeks ahead to do whatever you need to do. And you can see the temperature also reached, I mean, I choose this part of the graph, but that part of the graph also almost exactly the same thing, around 11-ish or 12-ish. So the oxygen also gives us the heads up when the recovery is actually possible, not only look at the temperature. And these are the examples that we see almost everywhere at the same time. The second case is very interesting. This is the definite winter kill situation. You can see the huge gap when the oxygen plunged to zero and then recovered back. Very straight line plunging and very straight line recover back. And you can see the recovery took almost like 4.5 months, almost in the middle of May. It's a huge time. And sorry, so it's a huge time. But I would like to show you that imagine that if we see this part of the graph, which is still in the green, and we know that it's already declining, if I zoom it in the data specific site of the customer on this part of the graph, we can see a decline a bit. This is for a longer time. When we pay attention to that, like the case number 3 of the Winterkill, we are able to control and we are able to monitor the situation far ahead. So basically, if they have controlled it, they could back to business by probably beginning of April. They did not need to wait until mid-May when the temperature was here probably around 15 and then 14 and 13 degree. So the temperature was there, but they could not manage it because they already have the anaerobic situation and the winter kill was there. So it's not easy to recover anymore. So everything is about preparation. And this is the better example. So you can see the same pattern, same plunging, but the recovery time is much, much faster because they have checked this golf course, they do the aeration, they make sure to keep the soil not that wet, keep the moisture actually a little bit toward, let's say, upper part of the dry zone in the water balance, which is the yellow zone on upper part of the water balance. So the moisture is just enough to make sure that you don't create a very wet situation, and with ice and the snow you create the winter kill situation. That's why the recovery time for the blue one is much faster. But you may ask why the green one is a little bit more take time to recover, even though the recovery is good. This is something that I'm going to cover to the rest of this webinar, but this is about soil compaction possibility and nutrient pickup throughout the year. That's why we see the phenomena like this. So when we talk about the oxygen, or basically when we talk about any point of measurement, we cannot rely on that measurement alone anymore. This is what we have found in Soil Scout, especially with the help of Happy 100. All of them are kind of and surely interconnected together. So we cannot see the oxygen sensor without the moisture, without the temperature, and without the salinity. We want to see all of them together because together they give us even more meaning, which we are going to cover throughout the rest of this session. And then you mentioned about the summer. So there's a lot of topic to cover when we talk about the summer heat, aeration, compaction, salinity, and the rest. I'm going to open it up just a bit more, but I'm sure you're still going to have much more questions that we can catch up later to answer them all. First thing first, one rule of thumb in the Soil Scout solution and design is that we want to make everything as simple as possible. We don't want to create headache. We don't want to create unnecessary data that makes you confused. So this is one of that. When you open up the Soil Scout Hub, you don't want to see any flat line. and you don't want to see big spikes and pulses. What I mean by that, if you see such graph, means that something is wrong with your soil, specifically your soil health. If you see your salinity is flat, sometimes for many months, and we are seeing it in many different locations, it doesn't mean that you have a very good infiltration. It doesn't mean that you actually leach your extra salinity to the deeper zone, but it actually means that you are going toward the compaction. This is one thing that I wanted to also cover in this webinar. And I'm going to explain more on the salinity, because salinity and bulk conductivity has two different meanings, and it's good to see it together on the Soil Scout Hub. And then same goes here. When you see the graph like this, means something is definitely wrong. This is unwanted in the Soil Scout Hub. So this is the simplification point of view. And I would like to explain more when we say you don't want to see the flat line. Let's connect the flat line to compaction. And this is the good example. Why it's good example? Because as you see, all the tree sensors in this golf course, they tried and they have been and they achieved to control the moisture in a very similar manner. It's exceptional. You can see it. But does this mean that we are actually having a good nutrient pickup by the root situation in this golf course? Does this that we are going to have some compaction or not? Salinity can give us this information. So moisture looks good, but when we see the red line is almost flat for a month, first of all, it means that most probably, by high chance, we are not picking up any nutrient if we have used any fertilizer in that golf course for a month. That's first. Second, if this flat line is going to extend for many months, it is clearly gives us the signal that we are going to have a soil compaction. And why is that? Salinity means what? Definitely salinity is not equal to nutrient, but there are something in the nutrient, in the fertilizer, including the nitrate or potassium, that they affect the salinity. They are saline. So when we use them, we should see the spikes, we should see the consumption of the nutrient. This is the healthy consumption, day and night, day and night, day and night in the soil. When we don't see any action, or when we see the graph like that, means something is wrong with the soil. And the reason I say something a lot is that because the soil is very complex. Talking about the soil in the concrete manner, 100% something is unheard of, and I don't think it's appropriate. But the graph simplification easily shows us that go to that point, check whether you have a compaction or not. Check if the nutrient is there or not, which we are able easily to add, as a groundkeeper and groundsman, you're expert in that, because by looking at the turf, you're able to see whether they are getting yellowish or not. And not picking up the nutrient gives you the indication that you would like to see, but we are seeing it from the soil point of view. So this is how important to look into your salinity from the compaction point of view and from the nutrient pickup point of view. And then there are some graphs that are directly affecting the health of the soil. And this is a very good example. I'm sure that 100% of you can immediately say, what's this problem? So it's a very good practice. It's a control environment, but that's the whole point. There is a proper irrigation in the blue one, small, constant, and it works with that soil type. At the same time, they are having too much short irrigation, which is the green one representing, and you can see the effect in salinity. it's a crazy spike. It's a huge spike. So any spike, as I said, is unwanted. And you can see it's continually. So basically, soil is give you the feedback every single day. So how to fix this green one? You want to give it less irrigation with the longer time. But at the same time, in the Soil Scout Hub, you can monitor it in the water balance to see if the graph is actually within the green zone and what's the moisture by itself, percentage, and the rest, and try to adjust it. But basically, this graph tells us, stop. I cannot handle anymore. I mean, just stop it. If you want me to be normal, like the blue one, changing your irrigation timing and duration. So this is very unhealthy, very unwanted. And then we go to this case. So what we see here, like the blue and green, let's say from beginning of the graph up to here, which is 26th of April, blue and green are in the same-ish moisture, but you can see the effect of the same moisture to the salinity. By the way, this is a very unhealthy, as we know, but it happens in some region of the world, including the Middle East. But it can be controlled. One practice there is to use as much as water to wash the salinity to the deeper zone. But if you do it more and more and more, technically you're not able to washing it. They are come back up, especially when you have a rain or extra, or let's say much more overwatering throughout the longer time. So the salinity actually brings back, so the whole salinity of the deeper soil bring back to the topsoil, and you're having even more problem. So we don't want to be reactive to the data. We want to see the data. Data is quite simple. It tells us what's the problem and how we can fix it, how we can control it, what to do and what not to do. So it's quite simple. And as we know, the range of the salinity to be healthy is somewhere between, let's say, 0.5 to 3, which is the healthy zone. And then I'm going to give you more information when switch back to the Soil Scout Hub on more salinity on the when we want to talk about the live data. So let's switch to the hub and see some live data together. I'm zooming to the salinity because salinity gives us a couple of information. Not just the salinity, but we also have the bulk conductivity. And you may ask, what's the difference? So just to show you the difference here, if I choose this sensor, for instance, and I check the field capacity here, and then I change it here, go to bulk conductivity, you can see the graphs drops down quite fast. So bulk conductivity means EC right now, like at the moment. And the salinity means what bulk EC would be if soil was filled with water. That's why we always see the salinity. But bulk conductivity also give you a very good information. As I said, it means EC right now. Means that if you're about to use some fertilizer today and you change the graph view to bulk conductivity, you should be able to see whether your roots actually having those nutrients and pick them up or not. So if you see them as a flat line and you're actually using the fertilizer right now, it means something is not right. That something can be discussed through, that depends on the situation of your golf course. But let's compare, let's say for this golf course, it's a good example. I did not prepare myself. I wanted to do on the fly for this one. So as you can see in this golf course, we want to choose these 3 different locations and see the difference of these 3 locations throughout maybe the last 6 months. Okay, what we see here is that clearly the blue sensor is having better situation. There are some nutrient pickup going on here. Certainly no compaction. And when we talk about nutrient pickup and no compaction, it also gives us that you don't need probably the aeration. So for this case, this is the Hydro 100. It's not Happy 100. But when you don't have a Happy 100 in that specific location, how can I know that whether you need to do the aeration or not? This is the way that you can interpret your data. So as long as your nutrient will picked up by the root zone, it means that you have enough air, including the oxygen, that able to do the chemical and process of the photosynthesis and pick up the nutrient. Otherwise, if you see this flat line, means that again, something is wrong. It could be aeration that needs to be done. It could be something else. But in this golf course, for the last 6 months, imagine if they have been used the fertilizer same amount in all these 3 different locations, they have not used a single molecule of nutrient probably in the red location, in the red sensor. And same also goes to the green up to some point. And why the green suddenly starts breathing out? That can be seen with the moisture and with the water balance. To do so, it's good to drag and drop salinity alongside the water balance and see it from this point of view. So the blue one has been fine, so let's not discuss it. But why green one suddenly opens up, if it is a compaction or not? What we can see here is that we clearly have overwatering situation on the green. As a simple rule, when we have too much water, we have very limited air, including the oxygen. So we create either hypoxia or compaction. So basically, the situation is not good for the soil to pick up any nutrient to live normally. But when the moisture drops to the green zone, you can see it yourself for the first time almost after 3 months, almost after 3 months. That's exactly the first time soil said, now I can breathe. You can see it here. So even without having the Happy 100, the salinity and moisture also gives you the same information. But the interesting part is that our experience shows that if you put the Happy 100 there, you even see more, because like the case 1, case 2, case 3 I show you there, you can see the whole declination and increase of the oxygen. So if you have that oxygen, instead of seeing it breathing here, you're able to seeing it that is going to actually recover a week ago or 10 days ago if you have the Happy 100. But without that, even with salinity and water balance together, you're able to kind of interpret it from the air point of view, which is not 100% correct, but it gives you some information. And you can see that you go back to the green zone, you have enough air again, and suddenly the nutrient pickup and the soil normal living back in business. And the other meaning is that actually the soil is very healthy, because if it is compacted, you cannot have this moment. You're not going to have it. It's already compacted. So you have to do the uncompaction process, like the aerification, and especially the core tine aeration. That's the thing that you must do. That's why actually you do that. But this is also a good point, meaning that if you want to treat, if you want to do the same aeration for the green and for the red, you're actually wasting the money for the green one because it is healthy. You just need to control your moisture in order to give it a chance to back in business. But the red one is clearly having a problem because it has been overwatering, it has been in the green zone, it has been dry, it has been everything, and still flat. It's exactly the same thing like when we go to hospital to check our heart. We don't want to see any flat line on the monitor. It's exactly the same thing here with the soil. That's why I said the flat line is not good. So I hope I give you the good idea to understand how to connect all these things together: water balance to salinity, salinity to oxygen and moisture, and try to interconnect connect all this information together. And I think I'm going to stop, and maybe we can discuss about any potential questions, John.
Yeah, sure. Actually, we've been collecting a nice little bank of questions here. First one would be, did you have an example from sandy soil?
Yes. For the oxygen, you mean?
Yeah, I think just in terms of Happy 100 plus salinity plus,
Yes, of course we have.
and just while you're answering that, from Peter Swinkles, in what part of the world did this research take place? I can say that Winston Golf is a public reference, and that's in Germany.
Yes.
And then some of the other cases were taken from a variety of environments from around the world.
Yeah, I show you the cases basically from Europe, from US, and the conditions that actually a little bit harsh compared to like too cold or too warm, all varieties. So all those cases are all around the world. And for the question you mentioned about the sand, this is the sandy environment, and this is the oxygen in the sandy environment. So most of them basically are in sand. We have some loams, but this is because the ground keepers once wanted to actually test and monitor what would be the difference between these two. But 90% of the cases is actually in the sand, and you can see they are very well named, like a control, dry, and wet, so we can understand what would be the difference between control and dry when it comes to the oxygen. And clearly, for instance, for this case, dries show when you are having a dry sand, you are able to have more oxygen constantly. And that's the interesting part, because if I put it here, you may shocked, but this is still true. So the field capacity should be reset. Why I'm saying, because you can see both of them are in the red zone, which is the permanent wilting point, which means it should have died, but it's not. This is the beauty of Happy 100, because when you see the oxygen, so let's say like this, kind of oxygen comes before everything else, and everything else can accumulate on top of that to give us better information. Like we used to have a moisture first sort of approach as a human practice all around the world, but the oxygen shows us that this is even much before than much before than the moisture. So when the oxygen is correct, you may have very low moisture and still everything is actually working. This is something we also experimenting all around the globe, and sometimes amaze us, and sometimes we don't even have a quiz, we don't even have an answer. It was some incidents a couple of weeks ago that none of us had answers for that, because the complexity of the soil. But that's also the beauty, and you can see it yourself. Basically, you're able to go even further with the moisture control and saving, but at the same time healthy soil, and everything is working. Is there any other question, John?
Yes, just checking on the chat. Just had one pop up there. So Thierry also said this was back a little while ago. On the graph, you can't tell the difference between sodium, chlorides, and the fertilizing element. How do you manage in this case? I think you partially answered that
Yes.
in your presentation, that it's in the context of what other applications and maintenance that you've already done. And for instance, if you are using groundwater to irrigate from a saline source, so it's not taking it in isolation. The context of the work that you're already doing should also help you to say what's happening in the soil.
Yes, Thierry, I would like to clarify this, that when we connect the salinity to nutrient pickup, it doesn't mean that it is exactly the whole nutrient, as I explained, because only the nitrate and potassium create some sort of saline condition that we can pick up. To monitor everything is not our job, and we do not have such solution yet. But this gives us enough. This gives us enough understanding, at least a basic understanding, that how to connect all these things together. Especially when you put the salinity alongside the Happy 100, that makes it even more interesting, because when we say, for instance, oxygen in the oxygen graph that um, let's say 15 and more up to 19.5 is the healthy one, sometimes in some cases 15% in oxygen equals to lower salinity, somewhere around 0.5 decisiemens per meter, which is not exactly the optimum, because we want to be in the range of one-ish sort of thing, because it also gives us that the nutrient actually utilized as much as possible by the root zone, and we are not having the leaching situation. So when we put this two information together, we can fine tune that, okay, for location A, is this 15%, because 15 is healthy, 19 is also healthy and enough oxygen, but which one is correct? We can start experiment whether 15 is correct or 16 or more by seeing basically hand in hand with the moisture and with the salinity to see what would be the action in the salinity at the same time in the moisture. That makes sense. Then we are able to fine tune. So the oxygen, since oxygen sensors gives us fine tuning like we never had before. That's the beauty of the Happy 100. I hope I could answer that. John, anything else?
Yeah, great question here from Patrick Hearn. For the crop farmers in the audience, do you have a comparison between sandy and loamy soils for soil health relative to oxygen levels?
So for the ag one, we have some sites, but for to answer this one specifically, I prefer Dr. Johannes to come back to you with, because he's focused on that and he knows much more than me. I was focused on and still focused on the golf, because crop by crop is different, as we know. Soil by soil and region by region is different. It's even much more complicated, like 10 times more complicated compared to the golf course. So give us a chance to go back and talk with Johannes, and probably he can come back to you with the answer, because he's on it.
Much appreciated. Great question. And then finally, Francois asked a question earlier, and then I realized that I only answered part of it. And one part of that question was, how does the Happy 100 sensor actually work? So I've got one here. Works in pretty much the same way as your other scouts, in that you have moisture and temperature, but also instead of salinity, what we actually have here is the dome, where there is a galvanic sensor that actually powers itself through galvanic reaction to subsoil oxygen levels. So that produces a very low electrical current, sits in the soil in the root zone. Might have to go slightly deeper than, so you can't really use it on like very shallow root zone crops or plants, but it sits in the root zone like this, powering itself, producing a current which is then read within accuracy of 1%. And then is transmitted to the hub same way, interoperable with all the other kit that we have as well. So yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah, compared to Hydro 100, just to add up on what John said, that's the only sensor that basically you need to calibrate before you use it. So when you have it in your office, there is a cap underneath of that cylindrical oxygen sensor. You remove it, put it on a desk, click calibrate. It finds out 21 point something %, which is the oxygen in the air, and then you're good to go, because you can go and do the exact same thing like what you do with the Hydra.
Yeah. Jesus Garcia Zamudio, that's a fantastic name, sir. Once the growing season has begun, and if the readings of the oxygen sensor value decline, are we interested in recovering oxygen activity if it declines rapidly during the day ASAP, or waiting for a night irrigation plan? So I think it's like, what's the urgency here? Yeah.
It's a good question, thank you, and the urgency is high. This is what I can say, that like and again, oxygen comes before, at least based on our 1.5 year of measurement. We may say something else, later on, but looks like oxygen is always standing before and ahead of any other measurements. So if you see the declining situation, like from here to here, something must be urgently going on, which is the aeration, which could be the aeration or any other practice you do. So any declination gives you an urgent action to do. That's something that I can 100% tell you almost immediately.
Yeah, so the plant root hairs themselves will start to die off after 4 hours of subsoil oxygen dropping below 10%. So what that means is the plant is going to go into stasis, essentially, a hibernation mode, until the oxygen levels recover. So the quicker you can recover them, the quicker it can start regrowing those plant root hairs, absorbing the nutrients, growing, a higher yield as well. A couple questions here from Raphael. What is the optimum depth at which to install a sensor to obtain the highest quality information possible? Well, I would say probably in the active root zone. So that depends on the crop, depends on the soil as well. And if you want to have a pre and post aeration information, wouldn't removing the sensor from the soil and reinstalling it after the machinery is passed over the soil distort the data a little? Good question.
The question of removing the sensor is always a good one, but give you another example. Like it's my favorite example, but I don't know if it makes sense for everyone or not. So it's like this smartwatch business that we all have some sort of it, from Apple Watch to to others. The whole thing that they maneuver on the health is to keep the smartwatch like the Whoop, for instance, constantly on your wrist, because if you remove it, you basically stop monitoring, stop measuring, and it's not very accurate anymore if you are really into the health and full measurement. Same applies here. So you don't want to remove the sensor as much as possible if you're not going to hit it with the aeration machinery, like you don't do it for the irrigation heads. So if you can do the same practice, that would be the best. Otherwise, it's not something that if you remove, everything goes wrong. No, it's not. It's designed to make your life simpler and faster and better. So if you think that you need to remove it, just do it. But the good thing is that we need to see the pattern. We want to always monitor the pattern. On the left side, we have measurements in the Soil Scout Hub. So it's just a measurement. So we see the last measurement of that point, which is 43.7% moisture, probably 20 minutes ago. But on the right side, we are seeing behavior. And behavior is something that you don't want to lose sight of. So it's like that. Hopefully I answered.
I think you did. Thank you for a very active chat section during this whole webinar. There's been some really great questions, and it's wonderful to see so many people from all parts of the world. I think we could just quickly revisit our polls. And we see now that with 39 overall votes, so about half the attendees, thank you for being active here. We see that summer, yes, is the toughest season with 54%, winter at 31%, and then spring at 10%, and autumn at 5%. Quite interesting. There, that the summer and the winter are the toughest to tackle globally. And then, at what soil temperature does cool season root regrowth start? So 56% of people think that it's 4 to 10 degrees, 57%, late vote. 30% of people think it's 10 to 18 degrees. 8% of people think it's 18 to 24 degrees, and 5% of people think it's 0 to 4 degrees. What do you have to say, Bahman, about that?
So 4 to 10 is the most, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting, guys. I don't know how you answered that, but if you go to the books, the soil science, the answer is 10 to 18. But Happy 100 shows that it's not just that anymore, as I showed some cases. Sometimes, and I would say 80% of the times with Happy 100, you're able to do sooner, which is in the 4 to 10 boundary, which is very interesting. It gives you a lot of momentum and a lot of time, and somehow it make not sense that much in terms of the whole foundation of soil science. But apparently 4 to 10 is the time that you can actually start if if the oxygen is already recovered or is in the right zone or in the green zone. So that's why there is a good reason that we ask that. So 10 to 18, I would like to say again, it's the correct one according to the soil science, but 4 to 10 is according to Happy 100 is something, it's something that you can rely on actually faster.
And with that, and a final review of the chat. Thank you very much, everybody. Very instructive. Thanks, Thierry, for that comment. It really has been a pleasure to run this webinar, Happy 100 through the seasons, and other interesting soil data with you. We thought we'd try something different and go really practical and hands-on. You will receive a link to the recording so you can watch it later. Not a problem. And if you have any questions, please reach out to the Soil Scout team. Bahman, as a head of sales, would be more than happy to answer your questions. And we hope to come back to you soon with some more interesting content, and hope to answer more questions that you may have about all things soil maintenance and soil science wise.
Especially on the summer one, we are going to create some articles and probably get back to you, maybe even have a one-to-one call to talk about the summer. It's apparently it's very challenging, and we have a lot to offer to you to give you a heads up.
And with that, we'll see you later, guys. All right, thank you. Enjoy your summers.
Thank you.